Okay, this is the lesson for 2.3. This is on finding intercepts. So we're talking about X and Y intercepts. In our last lesson, we did graphing in slope intercept form. So we're going to just develop that idea just a little bit further. So just as a little reminder, when we're graphing equations, 1/3 x minus 4, the number with the x tells us our slope, and the number without the x tells us our y-intercept, as long as it starts with y equals. So I would start from -4 on the y-axis, which is down here. So I would click a point, and then the top number is my rise, and then the bottom number is the run. And the run is always to the right. So starting from -4, I would go up 1 square. If it was -1/3, then I would go down 1 square. So I would go up 1 square, and then I would count across 3 squares. So make sure you don't count until you physically move the square. So 1, 2, 3. And then once I have this dot and this dot here, I can just go ahead and join them up. Unfortunately, I can't do it on here. When I have this on the smartboard, I can draw on the smartboard itself. -4x plus 5. So it starts with y equals. So I know this is slope intercept. So this time I would start from the, once again, the number without the x is where I start from on the y-axis. So I would start from here. Now this one's not a fraction. And when it's not a fraction, we want to make it into a fraction. So we can use rise over run. So what we do is we put it over 1. And the reason we do that is -4 divided by 1 is still -4. So starting from 5, my rise is my top number in the fraction. So that's -4. So negative tells me I don't actually rise, I actually fall, because I do the opposite. So I would go down 4 squares, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I would go over that 1 square. Now, if you just go down 4 squares like this, then hopefully you can see this is a vertical line, and that would be undefined slope. So we certainly don't want that. That's why at the end also, we have to count across that 1 square. Once you've got your 2 points, you can join them up with a straight line. And this one only has a single letter in, so we put a little reminder here. We remind you about Hoy and Vux. So when we only have one letter, if we look at the letter that they actually use, it will tell us which of these 2 words we should use. So for Vux, I'm going to use a V for vertical line. So I go to -3 on the x-axis this time. On my first 2 questions, I did y-intercepts, mainly because it started with y equals. So y equals and y equals. But this time it starts with x equals. So I'm going to start from -3 on the x-axis, and then I would just draw a vertical line because of the V in here. If it said y equals -3, then I'll start from -3 on the y-axis. But as it's a y, I would use this word here, and H stands for horizontal. So I would draw a line going across here if it did ask me about those ones. Then there's some questions for students to practice, which is our warm-up activity. You might want to kind of pause the activity and try the questions yourself using the Desmos activity, or you can just follow along right now. So 1/2 x plus 3. I know it's got to start from 3 on the x-axis, on the y-axis, sorry. So 1, 2, 3, which I can see this one does. And then I need the slope to be 1/2. So I need it to go up 1 and across 2, up 1 and across 2. So actually I can see it's this one straight away. Notice this one also has a y-intercept of 3, and these ones actually have slopes of y-intercepts of -3, so I can eliminate those 2 pretty quickly. And also with this being positive slope as well, I can see that it's not answer B as well. -1/2 x plus 1. So negative slopes I know go downwards as I read left to right, so I can already see that it's between B and D here. It says +1 at the end here, so they should start from 1 on the y-axis, which they both do. And -1/2 means I go down 1 and then right 2 because of rise over run. So down 1, right 2. Slope you can see here is actually down 2 and across 1. So this would actually be y equals -2x plus 1. I got negative slope again, so I can see it's between B and C, certainly. Looking at my y-intercept here, it says it's 2, so 1, 2. And that looks pretty good. Because I noticed this one doesn't have a y-intercept of 2. It has an x-intercept of 2, which is certainly not true. So I can see this one as answer B. I would want to check that slope, though, of -2. That means they go down 2. And remember, if there's only a single number, you're going to put it over 1, which would indeed bring me back to the line. Y equals 3. Single line, single word, sorry, single letter. So I know this is Hoy or Vux. So this is Hoy. So I need a horizontal line that goes through 3 on the y-axis, which appears to be A for this question. Just a single letter again. So this would be Vux this time because of the X. So I need a vertical line. So it looks like it's between these 2. But I need it to go through 1 on the x-axis. That one goes through 1 on the y-axis, which is no use. So I will be looking for C this time. Which graph represents y equals 2x? Well, I can see this is positive slope here. The number next to the x is positive. So it looks like it's between A, B, and C. I know my horizontal lines are ones where it's just a single letter, so I certainly know it's not D. Now, there's nothing at the end here which actually tells you that the y-intercept is actually 0. So this one doesn't go through 0, and neither does this one, which makes me think it's C. Let me just check that slope 2. So positive 2 means I rise 2, and then once again, make it a fraction by putting it over 1, and I would indeed get back to the line. So C would be a good answer for this one. X minus 1, this is 1x here. When there's no number, remember this is a positive one. So I can see that this is positive slope already. So I know it's between A and C here. I can see the y-intercept is -1 as well, which I can see A doesn't actually have that. Let me just check this slope here. So this is 1x, which means I would go up 1. But also it's a single number, so make it a fraction by going over 1. And it is indeed C. So this one does have a slope of 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. But it goes to be +1, not -1. 2x minus 3, I can see this is positive slope again, so I'm ignoring answers A and B straight away because I can see they're negative. It says it starts from -3 on the y-axis. So -1, -2, -3, looks like C is good. This one doesn't even go through the y-axis on my picture, so I can tell that it is C. And a slope of 2 again, up 2, cross 1, up 2, right 1, and so on. And then we've got our little reminder here about what actually y-intercepts are, where they cross the y-axis, and x-intercepts are where they cross the x-axis. So the x-axis, just to make sure, that's where this is the x-axis going across, and the y-axis is the vertical axis. Look at the 4 points on the x-axis and then plot them in the table. So this point here at -5, you can see that that's on the x-axis at -5. So I put -5. Now, from here to the point, you can see it's the same point, so I don't actually need to go up any at all. So I'm going to put a 0 for this one. And similarly for the other points here, this would be -2, 0. The point that I have here would be -1, 0. And the last point that I have here, I can see is 3, 0. And what do you notice about the y value for each point? I notice that the y value is always 0 for x-intercepts. So if I'm asked specifically to write a coordinate, I need to make sure that I list where does it go through on the x-axis, but I also need to make sure that I put in the y value as 0 as I actually do this. And you can see the points. I actually clicked label this time just so you could see that they indeed were the correct points. And also, as you notice here, if I was to draw a line through these points here, you can see this is a horizontal line. And from Hoy and Vux, my horizontal lines all start with y equals. Notice the y value here is 0, so I could put y equals 0 as that line as well, if it asked me for the equation. Now, similar thing for the vertical lines here. So I'm going to start there on that point there. So this time I would go across 0 and I would go up 3. So this would be, 0, 3. This point here, I would go across 0 and up 1. The point right on the origin there, that's 0, 0. That's another word for 0, 0, origin. And this point here, I would go across 0 and then I would go down 2. So this would be 0, -2. And this time, what do I notice? Well, actually, it's the reverse. This time I notice the x values are 0 or y-intercepts. And just so you can see, I did actually label the points this time just to confirm that those are indeed the correct answers. And if I was to draw a straight line through these ones here, you can see this is a vertical line. So I will be using the word Vux to come up with the equation. So I will be saying x equals, and notice the x values are 0. That's why this line here is actually called x equals 0. And also just to show you why similar points, I plotted some other points and drew the table. Notice for my horizontal lines, the y values are actually the same. That's why this equation is called y equals 2. But we could have used Hoy to recognize that once we see it's a horizontal line. Similarly, if I had plotted points on a vertical line like this, you can see this time the x values are the same, and that's why the equation would be x equals -1. But that's why we came up with that word Vux to remind us that points that lie on a vertical line have the same x values. So as we're writing our intercepts, there's a couple of different ways that we can do it. We could just say that it crosses at 4 and say an x-intercept of 4, or we could be asked to write the coordinate. So just make sure that the x value is 4 and then the other value would be 0. And for our y-intercept, we could just say the y-intercept is 3, or if we plot it as a coordinate, just make sure the 3 is where the y value is, and then the other value is 0. So x-intercepts take the form x0, and y-intercepts take the form 0y, and you can see the 2 points there. Now, one of the questions that they could build on from what we were doing last lesson is, if we have an equation like this, find out what the x-intercept is. Now, we know that once it's in y equals form, we know that this number is the y-intercept. So if the question said, what is the y-intercept, that would obviously be a very simple question. To find out what the x-intercept is, graphing would be a good way for actually finding this out as well. So my slope of 3 here, I know I need to put it in a fractional form, so it would be 3 over 1. And that means I would go up 3 squares, and then I would go across 1 square. I would go up 3 squares, and I would go across 1 square. And I could do this as many times as I need, but as I just want to find the x-intercept, I can see it from here straight away. So 0, 1, and 2. It does ask us to write it as a coordinate, so 2, 0. I go across 2, and I don't go up any. And hopefully that's I got it right. Yeah, good job. And we'll move on to the next one. And you can actually see that that's the graph plotted much more accurately. You can indeed see that it goes through 2, 0. All right, your turn to do the questions. Sometimes they don't have the numbers on. You can pause and have a try yourself using the Desmos activity, or you can just follow through with the questions if you weren't here. So for the x-intercept, so I'm starting from here, the origin. I'm going left 1, 2, 3. So as I'm going left, I know this is going to be a negative number, and I need the first number to be that negative number because I'm on the x-axis. So negative 3, 0 would be good for this one. For the y-intercept, I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's negative 9, and I need to make sure I pick the y value as negative 9, not this one. Negative 9, 0 means I go this way 9 squares. I know sometimes the answers can look very similar when we take tests for this. All right, the graph y equals 3 is shown. Even if they hadn't have drawn this for us, notice we should know what it looks like anyway. One letter, so I'm looking for hoy because that has a y in it. Horizontal line going through 3 on the y-axis. But anyway, they drew this for us. What is the x-intercept? Well, this doesn't go through the x-axis at all. So sometimes they will have questions where there is no intercept at all, and we just have to make sure we understand what that's talking about. What is the y-intercept? Well, clearly 3. But I have to make sure, not the x value, I have to make sure that the y value is 3. So I'm going to select that one there. Your turn now. So in reverse here, x equals 4. I would have known this is a vertical line anyway because of books. And you can see that it goes through 4 on the x-axis with that vertical line. Just remember the ones that start with x equals go through start on the x-axis. The ones that start with y, they're the ones we're going to start from on the y-axis. So what is the intercept here? Well, it goes through 4. So I just need to make sure the x value is 4 and then 0. So I've got to avoid this answer. 0, 4 is actually not even on the screen here. What is the y-intercept? Well, here is the y-axis, and this does not cross through the y-axis. So no answer for that one. Which graph best represents the line that has the x-intercept of 7, 0? So that's an x-intercept of 7 and a y-intercept of 0, negative 2. That means negative 2 on the y-axis. Now I notice on my scale here, I can see it goes to 10 and there's 5 squares. So I know this goes 2, 4, 6. Oh, actually, I think it goes 2.5, 5. Actually, there's 4 squares. I miscounted 1, 2, 3, 4. So not a great scale for this one at all. 2.5, 5, 7.5. But I can see certainly that this is nowhere near 7 because it's not even close to 10 on the x-axis. So I'm going to ignore this one here. This one's fairly close to 10, so I can believe this is 7. But notice the y-intercept is positive here, whereas this says negative. So I'm going to ignore that one too. This doesn't go anywhere near 7, so I'm going to avoid this one. So I think it's this one here. It certainly looks like it's between 0 and 10. That looks like it goes through at 7. But notice more importantly on here, this is a negative one. Now, actually, this one I just noticed has 5 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this one actually does go up in 2s. So yes, you can see that this one does go through negative 2. 1, 2, 3, that would be 6 and 8. So yeah, 7 is in the middle for this one. I think I might need to fix the picture for that one just to correct that. X-intercept of negative 5, 0. So I'm looking over this side of the graph. So it's not this one. It might be this one. It's definitely not this one. But it could be this one as well. So let's take a look. And a y-intercept of 8. That's pretty close to 10 on the y-axis. I can agree with that. I can clearly see this one's going to be negative 8. So I'm going to stick with this answer here. That's kind of the summary. Nothing overly complicated on this, which is why we often use lesson 2.3 to catch up on our remediations. This particular year, we actually used it for our remediations for module 11 to catch up. So if you were absent, that might be something you'd want to stay after to try and catch up on as well. That concludes the video for this lesson. That's it.